Growing up, I thought that I was like every other girl who had a slight obsession with Jessica Rabbit and Katie Lang and Melissa Etheridge. A girl who was more comfortable borrowing her brother's baggy pants and backwards hats than putting on an Easter dress, who would rather play in the mud than in makeup, and who dropped out of ballet to get her black belt in Taekwondo. I didn't realize that there was anything that would have been considered different about me until I was 12 years old, right around when puberty and sexual feelings started to take over, and I felt something that I couldn't explain. And it was something that made my throat close up and my stomach clench, something that made my mouth go dry and my pulse race. And it was something so simple, yet so terrifying. I thought women were beautiful. And I realized I had always thought women were beautiful. But because I was born that way, I never once stopped to think that that was strange or anything to fear. But later in life, as a teenager who had bore witness to hate speech and taunting of the LGBT community, I instinctually buried those feelings. I silenced my voice because I thought it would save me. On top of that, there were inconsistencies to my feelings because I also thought that men were beautiful. Woo. And I had no way to put what I felt into words. I had no role model. No one I knew was talking about it. I wasn't exposed. So the only thing that I knew was fear and confusion and loneliness. How can you be who you are when you don't understand what you're feeling? And the more I kept silent, the more my self-esteem got lower and lower and lower. And then one day, I heard an actress say the word bisexual. And I thought, what the hell is that? And when I found out, a light bulb went off. The word didn't make me feel marginalized. It made me feel less crazy. It made me feel less alone. It gave me hope. An actress just said a word, but it made a world of difference in my life and in my identity. As an actor, my job is to look at a stranger and find myself in them, to connect the dots, to have such empathy for a character that I can read someone else's words and be moved to tears, turning empathy into vulnerability. And it was the best therapy and outlet for my silenced voice. I could throw on a mask and say all the things I always wanted to say, but never could. And it wasn't until I saw the effect that it had on other people that I really started to see how powerful allowing your most vulnerable parts to be seen was. I saw another side to what I did, and it was the power of visibility. I realized that every time I had reached out my hand to someone through a song or a performance of mine, I was also reaching for someone's hand. I see you, you see me, we aren't so different. And through that connection, the healing begins. Last year, on June 10th, 2016, I was reading some pretty startling statistics about bisexuals and bisexual youth that the Human Rights Campaign had released. I wasn't startled because I was surprised. I was startled because it was like reading an autobiography. Statistics about suicide, addiction, sexual harassment, rape, and intimate partner violence specifically rang true for me. And I racked my brain as to why. Why were bisexuals so susceptible to these kinds of things? And I figured there was no better person to ask than myself. And the only answer that I could come back with was self-esteem. There was shame about what I felt and how I identified. from outside the community, and unfortunately, as well as in at times. There was misinformation and what seemed to be a competition of suffering. I felt denied the right to suffer, and more importantly, denied the need to connect through that suffering. It's one of the main things that connects us, but how do you measure it? A favorite analogy of mine is a person's suffering is similar to gas. If any amount of gas is pumped into an empty chamber, it will fill it completely, no matter how big the chamber. Suffering completely fills the human soul and conscious mind, whether the suffering is great or little. Therefore, the size of human suffering is irrelevant. And if you truly believe that you have suffered more, then you should have twice as much empathy when you see anyone suffering, even just a little. So, I had an uncontrollable urge to sit down and tell my story, because no one else will. And if something's making you feel strange and afraid, chances are it's making someone else feel that way too. They just need someone to say it first. So I recorded a video of myself walking people through my journey of self-realization, abusive relationships, suicide attempts, finally coming out of the closet, and ultimately survival. And I posted it on YouTube for the world to see. And the response was so incredible. And so many people wrote me and said, finally, someone has put what I feel into words. Two days later, the Pulse shootings in Orlando took place. Words matter. Your voice matters. How you use it matters, and why you use it matters. And I hope that my words gave someone a softer place to land after that devastating blow. I know that the people who reached out to me because of that video certainly did. Some people don't believe that artists should speak up. I think that Nina Simone said it best when she said, I choose to reflect the times and situations in which I find myself. That, to me, is my duty. And at this time, at this crucial time in our lives when everything is so desperate and when every day is a matter of survival, I don't think you can help but be involved. How can you be an artist and not reflect the times? That, to me, is the definition of an artist. Nina. I think that art matters. I think the voices of artists matter. They have everything to lose and nothing to gain by speaking their truth. I believe a true artist doesn't care what people think, but a truer artist cares about people. And I choose to be seen so that we may connect. And I choose to use my voice because it would feel selfish to have acquired the platform to represent the underrepresented and to not use it, and to not be heard. And you will be heard. People wouldn't try so hard to silence and discredit you if your voice didn't matter. There was a time, despite what it may have looked like on the surface, that the fear had gripped me so tight, and I felt broken and unlovable, and I did not think that I would see tomorrow. But because of the voices I had listened to, because of the people I identified with, the films I had watched, the music I had heard, because of words like bisexual and the doors that it opened, I'm still here. And I didn't miss out on the most beautiful thing I've seen yet, and that was my son. Visibility creates hope. And to be here today and to have the opportunity to take off that mask and be honest about who I am and what I've experienced is pretty indescribable. To have my parents' support, to have my father and my stepmother in the audience, along with my along with my loving and patient fiance, reminds me just how important that support from your family and loved ones is. People that love all of you unconditionally. And how important organizations like the Human Rights Campaign are and the difference that they make in people's lives. So I am honored to accept this award. And I'm gonna leave you with one more quote by E.E. Cummings, which is taped to my mirror, and I look at it every day. To be nobody but yourself in a world that is doing its best to make you somebody else is to fight the hardest battle you are ever going to fight. Never stop fighting. Thank you.